Howdy guys. So I'm starting on the cabinet for the towel. So I've removed all the hardware. There's lots of rust on all the different metallic pieces, so that'll all have to be cleaned up. Not sure what I'll do with these guys because I'm sure when the rust basically goes through the plating to the bare metal underneath, and so if I polish it up, obviously it will take the plating off, and so I'll have to recoat it with something that hopefully is going to look not too different. We'll see. But you can see they're pretty rusted on the back. I don't know if that shows up on the camera, but yep. The moisture got out the metal. Fortunately, the wood itself seems to be in pretty good shape. I guess the veneer is lifted all along the bottom here, so I have to put that back down. That shouldn't be hopefully too big of a problem. The left foot front foot here is missing, but is off, but fortunately I have it, so I can refit it. It's kind of a weird coincidence, but the picture, the photograph of one of these up on the RM.org site clearly shows the same foot has been completely replaced because it's a completely different color to the original. So not quite sure why the foot on that side has a tendency to fall off. Probably the biggest piece of work here is there's a chunk of veneer missing along this bottom edge here, so we're going to have to replace that and hopefully make it look not too visible. I think the rest of the cab is in reasonable condition. I don't think the moisture was added long enough because the interior has dried up nicely and there really isn't any permanent wood damage on there. This side is all pretty okay. Yeah, so bit of a clean up, and you can see how, I don't know if it shows on the camera, but you can see how it darkens over time, because presumably this was the color of the cab when they put those horizontal metal bars on the cab. Right, some gluing and some veneering. Okay, I think that's the re-gluing of the veneer all along this bottom edge. I'll refit that foot later on. And I've cut a replacement piece of veneer to complete the side piece there, which is missing. So that should stabilize everything and make it so that no more damage can get done to it, you know, as more work is done. One thing I did notice is wherever this cab was situated, this edge here was quite close to, I'd say, where people pass by, because there's many knocks and dings on this curve here, and there's almost nothing at all on the opposite one. So this was on a corner shelf or table or somewhere where people regularly went by and hit it. So, and the veneer is extremely thin, so yeah, I'm not sure what I'll do to see if I can repair some of that damage and restore a nice looking curve. But we're a little ways off from that yet, so let all that set up. The other thing I had to do was on the top here. It's clear that there was definitely moisture running along the bottom, which is probably why this foot came off. Because the wood here has sort of expanded and then shrunk, and so there's a gap between the curve and the base plate underneath, so I filled that with plastic wood, and we'll let all that set up and then sand it up. And yeah, of course the other challenge with veneering is this veneer is so thin, and most veneers you get these days are just a tad thicker. And so when all this is set up, I'm going to have to thickness sand the new piece to be nice and flush with what's there already, and hopefully not go through what's there for the last 70, 80 odd years. Okay, I think that's the cab for now. Cleaning up some of the rust on the hardware on this cab. This could prove a challenge. This faceplate here looks as though it's been copper plated and then some sort of a dark lacquer put on it, but the tail and the little crossbow show through with the original copper color. It's quite subtle. Doubt I'm going to be able to reproduce that terribly accurately, and where the rust is bad, it clearly goes right through to the base metal underneath. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. But yeah, so the rust got to the metal somewhat more than it did to the wood. Okay, so I've cut out the clean edge where the veneer was missing, and I've put in a replacement which is a little bit thicker than what's there, so I'll have to sand that down, and then we'll have to see about toning it to more closely match the rest, but we'll get to that when we do cabinet finishing. So the void, let me see if I can get that in. So the void that was here, there was a gap here where the wood had shrunk or come adrift, so that's all filled in to make it secure. And all across the top here where the veneer was lifting, it's all now down and secure. It's not perfect, but then I don't think if a set at this age we're going to get it like new, but we get it close. So at this point I don't have to worry about things falling off and pieces of veneer coming loose on the cab, and so I guess the rest can wait until I come to actually finish the thing. I found one rather nasty, you probably can't see it, but there's one real nasty ding on the top here, so I don't think that's going to come out. It's far too deep, but yeah, so far so good with the cab. Okay, I took the card dial off just to make sure it didn't get damaged, because I knew getting this pin out, which held everything in place here, was going to be fun. And sure enough it was. Lots of rust everywhere. It took a little bit of hammering to get that out of there. However, once I got that clutch mechanism off, at least now I know that I have the full 180-degree travel on the tuning condenser. So I'm not quite sure why, but the binding was to do with this guy here and the clutch mechanism on it. I don't see any reason at the moment why it was binding, so yeah, interesting. So I guess my next one is, do I take this plate off so I can clean up and do everything I need to behind there? So probably yes. Okay, I got there in the end, in the sense that I got this plate off the tuning condenser shaft. I couldn't see how it was actually held on, but in the end I discovered there is actually a circlip here, which is kind of difficult to see when you're if you're like not sure what you're looking for. And so essentially what happens is you have a mechanism here which floats, and the shaft to drive the dial is here on the bottom, and you have the tuning dial shaft which comes out the center here, and these are all precision fits with this hole here and with the brass bush. And so when you fit this in, it holds everything precisely in line. And then you obviously have two screws here to hold it to the shaft, and then you have a circlip to keep it lined up with this floating mechanism here. So yeah, definitely over-engineered, well, by our standards. But cool, at least now I know how this thing works, or how it's all linked up. So usual clean up, lube up, everything else. And the good news is the tuning dial, tuning condenser, does move the full 180 degrees, no problem. So hopefully when we put all this back together, it will continue to work without. I see no reason though why this thing was jammed up. Just about like 15 degrees movement either side of where it was. So I just have to hope when I put it all back together, it'll still work okay. Right. The dial was in pretty bad shape, so I've been having a look at trying to clean it up a little bit. It's come up quite well, but obviously I've been very paranoid not to touch the actual print and to just clean between. And I'd almost leave it as it is, except there's a few here where the text is completely overwritten with lead pencil. And so you can't really see them at all. So I think what I'm going to do at this stage is I'll take a scan of the dial so I have a reference, and then if I need to recreate I can do that. And it's always handy to have a reference anyway. But yeah, there were 3 locations where the dial was most commonly set, because in fact I think predominantly here and here, because the card is discolored from the heat from the light behind it. And then obviously later on somebody spent a lot of time listening to Radio Luxembourg. Okay, right, next.